Michael hit me up and Colin Moriarty up with a video. You had some stuff to say about the conversation Colin and I had a couple of weeks back when it came to GamerGate. The biggest problem with GamerGate to me was they seemed so proud about not having any leadership.
You were like, you didn't understand, there's no leadership, there was no manifesto.
Yeah.
Things along that line. I mean, there was sort of a loose leadership structure. Like anyone who was involved from day one would go back and tell you, oh yeah, there was Sargon, there was, Christina Hoff Sommers got involved later. But these people are not journalists, they're much more politically inclined than anything to do with ethics and games journalism. But there were people involved very early on, like William Usher, Oliver Campbell, a couple other people who were really focused on the journalism aspect. And then you had nutsos like, Milo Yiannopoulos, he got his ass involved, but
ultimately though, how are you disagreeing? Because when I would talk to GamerGate people and they would approach me online, I would say, well, do you have a website? Do you have a manifesto? What's your leadership like? We don't have that.
I would tell you to go to deepfreeze.it.
Yeah, but you would. But that's what I'm saying. I would. My point of why there was no leadership, they almost presented that to me as a sense of pride. Like, we don't need a leadership. And I was like, okay, I was like, yeah. No doubt. I was like, well, if you care about your cause, history is filled with ways that political causes are achieved. And I guarantee you there are very few you will find that are just made up of people every day randomly taking up your cause and saying it's about this and disagreeing. The whole thing kind of collapses. So that was my point to Colin, which is like, if you don't have leadership and you don't want leadership and you're not offering anything better, it's hard for me to take your cause all that seriously.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, that was a point that I had brought up early on because I was one of the larger figures in it. There's an image. It's just a ball of data. Now, I'm not going to pretend that everybody represented in this data is a gem of a person. That's not what the data is supposed to represent. The data represents where the bulk of the information filtering through GamerGate came from. This is probably around September 2014. Not long after things got going, people had solidified themselves as the people to go to if you wanted information on GamerGate, what the issues were, how things were going, what was transpiring. The clump on the left represents GamerGate, the clump on the right represents anti-GamerGate. And on the left, you may recognize some of these names. Christina Hoff Sommers, she was a feminist intellectual. Lizzie F620, Liz Finnegan, she ended up writing for The Escapist at some point. Sargon of Akkad, that's Carl Benjamin, Nero, Milo fucking Yiannopoulos. On the top, you got William Usher. On the bottom, Oliver Campbell. I remember these two were pretty focused in on the journalistic aspect of things at the time. I was on this little circle of data as well, and that's FOXIGON. That was me. I actually remember I caught some shit from GamerGate when this image came out, because when the data scientists put this out, I suggested that the data shows a loose leadership structure of GamerGate at the time. And people threw a fit about that. A lot of people spurred the fuck out over the idea that GamerGate had any sort of leadership structure at all. Because, for some reason, people get it in their heads that their opinion is equally as valid as everybody else's. Sorry, no, bad ideas are bad. So, to your point, why no manifesto? Why no leadership? Because GamerGate was too busy sabotaging themselves. At first, it was legit just ethics and games journalism. It was saying, hey, you guys want to update your ethics policies, or maybe just have an ethics policy? We noticed that you're covering up for people and you're bullshitting and saying this happened here when it didn't.
So people to this day still say, they're like Jeffy's GamerGate, and all I ever did, and I never was.
You told Kuchera to go fuck himself, basically.
I feel terrible about saying it, but nowhere in that sentence do I say the only way you're going to get sex is underhanded trickery. That is your reporter bringing her own fucking agenda to the table, and you fucking know it.
Where do you want this to go, David?
I don't want to go anywhere. I want to go. I'm respecting you because you keep reading shit. Well, I'm happy to be done. Trust me, I'll be done with you. I'll be done with your site. I mean, it's bullshit, dude. It's bullshit. It's Bush League. It's bullshit, and you should be ashamed of yourself. You're a fucking real journalist. I've always respected journalists. That's bullshit. Fuck Gawker, man. Fuck you guys. We're done. We're done. Don't fucking write about what the fuck you want, but we're done.
Okay, David.
Well, that wasn't even GamerGate. I had nothing to do with GamerGate.
No, but people associated it with it.
Yeah, people are fucking morons. People are like, they're not educated. It's all black and white. And I'm like, but here's the deal. I said to this person online, they said, let me send you a document or a PDF or just like an image, like a poster of what GamerGate is. And at the very bottom, all it said was, GamerGate is for ethics and journalism and is not for harassing women or something like that. Right?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And I copied it and I said, well, okay, if this is what GamerGate is, then sure, I'm a proud member of GamerGate. Because who would disagree with not wanting ethical journalism, and who would agree with harassing women? And suddenly and again, no one wants nuance, and I don't care anymore. People would say, Jaffa, you have to understand that's the internet. I'm like, I don't care. I won't play the game. I would rather just be a pariah and have a lot of people turn me off and think badly about me than go, I have to be a fucking moron when I explain things to people. Okay, so... But no, and because, yes, of course, like Sumo in the chat says, so GamerGate wasn't about harassing women.
Fuck what you heard. GamerGate did not bring in the culture war aspect of GamerGate, ironically. It was the people that GamerGate was accusing of journalistic malpractice and being generally shady pieces of shit. When this whole thing kicked off, especially, most people really did just want to talk about ethics in video game journalism and how it was affecting the video game industry. But right off the bat, the people who were getting all the flack, their defense mechanism was to turn to the culture war. So these people who had no defense for what they had done professionally or personally injected a bunch of socio-political rhetoric into the conversation to use that as a way to deflect all the blame and responsibility away from their actions. The people that we were accusing of journalistic malpractice essentially turned around and said, well, you wouldn't be saying this unless this person wasn't a woman. If this person wasn't a woman, you wouldn't be bringing this up. And it's like, I really couldn't give a shit less if it was a woman, a dude, a dog. Like, I don't give a shit. The idea is stupid. The idea is bad. I'm just telling you the idea is stupid and bad, and here's why. And this is 2014, but leading into GamerGate, you had a good couple of years of articles popping up like, the gaming community, man, they're fucking really toxic. And what's all this toxic masculinity? And have you heard the Xbox Live Call of Duty chat? Oh my God. It's like, yes, this is dudes being dudes. And then there's women getting a bunch of shit online. It's just the nature of the beast. Like, what the fuck do you want literally everybody to do about it?
Well, well, hang on a second. So let's be clear. Ethics in game journalism, and I want to talk to you about that briefly in a minute, but how much of GamerGate then, to echo Sumo, was so you're basically saying one of the tenets of GamerGate was to take these articles that were pointing out the harassment of women online or guys doing hate speech online. GamerGate did not want articles like that written. You thought that was an unethical thing.
No, that was fine. I mean, it's an opinion piece at that point.
Right. So what,
I think it's happening. There's just things that led up to it. It's for the political aspect of things. It was Patricia Hernandez and people like that at Polygon and Kuchera and others who were just spinning this narrative. And then next thing you know, GamerGate happens, and within like a week or two, you had Rock Paper Shotgun, you had Kotaku, Polygon, Destructoid, you had all these publications writing the gamers are dead articles. You remember that shit?
That was Kama Sutra. That was Leigh Alexander.
Yeah, she started it. But then there were a bunch of copycat articles from a bunch of different publications, and people were like, wow, it's almost like you have a little group, you're all talking together and forming a narrative.
Right.
And they were, and that was the whole Game Journal Pros thing. I don't know if you remember that.
I do, but what? And look, the game journalists don't have any love for fucking me. Are you kidding? They don't like me at all.
They fucking like you at all. You're too open-minded.
Okay, but my question is, when you're bringing that up, I was also confused by this part about ethics. So the stuff you're talking about, who cares what Stephen Totillo writes? Who cares what Patricia Hernandez or Leigh Alexander writes? There's a lot of people that write shit I don't like that I just choose not to read. Who cares what Sean Hannity says? I don't agree with him politically. So other than every now and then tuning in to make sure that I'm not in an echo chamber, he's a guy who's not really on my radar. Why? And the funny part was I was always just like, well, the best way to deal with it if you really don't like these journalists is support journalists that you do like. And the only ones that really popped were things like One Angry Gamer, which is one of the most toxic, awful, horrific communities. I mean, I tried to hang in with that guy as long as I could because I'm an open-minded guy, and even though I hate racism and stuff, I figured he has a right to be racist. But man, his community is it's just, you know, so fucking hateful that you would think GamerGate would have been like, you know what? Let's make our own website and let's put up journalists that really are about ethics and game journalism, and let's win that way. What did you hope would happen? That Kotaku would get shut down?
Well, some people really did try. There was this thing, I don't know if you remember this thing, it was called Operation Disrespectful Nod. Do you remember this shit?
No.
It's a common thing. I mean, the left and the right, I would imagine, do it quite a bit, but you hear it more from the left because people like Tucker Carlson complain about it more. He'll say things like, man, they're trying to shut down our advertisers, taking our advertisers away. People have been doing that for a very long time. That's what Operation Disrespectful Nod was. It was an email campaign.
I remember that. Okay, I didn't know it was called that, but okay, I know what that is. Yep.
Yeah, that was the whatever meme name they came up for it, and it was mildly successful, but it wasn't as successful as say, Hulk Hogan versus Gawker. You know.
Sure, but let me ask you, why even do that? Why not just stop going to the website?
I actually caught a bunch of shit for this because I thought that was stupid and a waste of time, and it wasn't going to get rid of anything. It's just going to take some advertisers away. The smoke's going to blow over. The advertisers will come back. That's what they do. They like money. If the clicks are there, they'll come back and they'll get it. So I thought it was stupid. And because I thought it was stupid, I kind of got cut out after that. Some Twitter eggs kind of came after me, and they managed to figure out where I lived. And then they photoshopped some weird pictures of my baby daughter that I had at the time. And I had Child Protective Services come up after me. So I'm not a big fan of these fucking people.
Did you get what happened to your baby daughter? Did she go away?
Oh, no, because I know the cops. I'm
ex-military. You said you had her at the time.
Yeah. Well, she's still alive and well.
It's good.
She was a baby at the time.
I understand. Okay, but even that, like, there's a guy in the chat, Brad Glasgow, who is a journalist. He says the problem, Jaffe, is that there's no real alternative. Every major gaming publication is far left, intersectional Marxist. Okay, that seems extreme, but let's assume for the moment that's absolutely true. I know what you're saying, Brad, and I think you're right to an extent. There is definitely a group think amongst a lot of these major sites, no doubt. But if you're basically saying there's no alternative, then what you're really saying is there's no market. I mean, trust me, if there's a market for Fox News, if there was a market for a more, what maybe you guys would call fair, maybe what some people would call centrist, I don't fucking know, some people would call right-wing, I don't know. But if there was a market for a different kind of games journalism, then wouldn't that be filled? I mean, what would stop you from opening up a website that's all the kind of journalism about video games that you want to do?
Yeah. Well, funny you mentioned that. There was a site that started around that time. There was this girl named Jenny Barrage, and she's gone on to do some influencer stuff.
Okay.
But she, at the time, they started this website called basedgamer.com, and if you look it up now, I don't think it fucking exists. It didn't really get very big, but the idea was there, and I think they found out pretty fast your production value can be great and everything can be fantastic, but writing video game news without just looking at a press release and copy and pasting it and being like, well, that's the news, now what? It's like, yeah, you might have to get out and do some actual fucking journalism, which is why people like Jason Schreier, as much as I disagree with him politically on basically everything, he's a great fucking journalist occasionally. He has some great pieces.
Comparatively speaking, if you can,
Comparatively speaking, yes. In the gaming journalism realm.
Right, yeah,
and I mean, that's the other thing. I wanted to talk about this as far as ethics in gaming journalism. GamerGate actually did care about it, right? And I can prove this because we actually put a little coalition together, and they met with the Society of Professional Journalists.
Okay.
And they got something done. I mean, the SPJ told us for a long time, basically, fuck off. I mean, we don't want any part of this.
Okay.
But one guy who was there, I think it was Michael Koretsky was his name, he heard us out, and he ended up getting this award created, the Kunkel Award. And I think this Kunkel dude, he used to write for like Atari magazine or some shit a million years ago. It was something. And it's been an award for the past 5 or 6 years, since 2015. So for excellence in video game journalism.
Okay.
I mean, so we got that done. It's just to promote the idea, like, hey, let's reward these guys who actually do good journalism.
Yeah.
I
got lambasted on my blog, and I stopped doing a blog a while ago, but it's still up, and you can go see it. where the game journalists came after me because I proposed, hey, everybody's complaining about game journalism. Why don't we do a Kickstarter? And every year, let's raise like $130,000 or let's raise as much as we can in this month. And every journalist gets $100,000. And if we make more than $200,000, we get 2 journalists. And everyone votes. And that journalist won't have to be beholden to a corporation or to a website. They can just use that money to live for a year and write about what they think is important. And all the journalists, yeah, well, it's happening now. That's what Colin Moriarty does. He's making a hell of a lot more than $100,000 a year. A lot of these guys are, and ladies are, and they should be, because ultimately they did exactly that. They said, the audience will be there if we give them what they want. But the game journalists came after me. It's like they were like insulting me because I thought that $100,000 was worthy. They're like, we don't make close to that. You're so out of touch. I'm like, I know you don't make close to that. I'm saying if you're doing good work, you should make a great living, and they just they couldn't handle it. But I mean, I agree that a lot of the gaming press is shit. But again, I don't agree that the goal is to tear them down. I think the goal should be to build up something that's better.
No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, that was one of the reasons I had the biggest issue with that whole email campaign stuff, because a lot of time and resources got put into that. People kind of took their eye off the ball, and they just spent all their time sending emails to advertisers. And it's like, well, you could just spend all this time
because they weren't
making your own site.
Yes, because they weren't serious, and that's why they didn't like me. Yeah. Because if you really cared about this, and it wasn't just something that made you feel part of a tribe, and it didn't make you feel like, you were welcomed and wanted for your views that maybe were outcast in a lot of other places, you would actually sit down and do that. You would go, okay, well, what's our goal? And what are the 8 steps to get to that goal? And I guarantee you one of those 8 steps would have easily been, let's start figuring out ways to fund websites that, you think the GamerGate community couldn't have kickstarted enough money to launch a website? Of course they could have.
They did raise $150,000 for various charities, including a feminist game jam thing, purely to piss off Zoe Quinn because she tried to shut it down. Okay. But that was the one thing. I mean, they had the capability to raise money. They did it. It's just they didn't do anything really with it after the fact.
So was there anything I said with my conversation with Colin then that you disagreed with? Because it sounds like we pretty much agree on this stuff.
Well, that's something I wanted to mention. Mainly the leadership thing. I wanted to tell you that there was an attempt for a leadership structure to form in some essence. It's just they did not want it. And for the most part, the people who were really big and people who got the biggest out of this and who probably got the most out of GamerGate, none of them are involved with games anymore. They're either political commentators or they're professional victims for a living. They were before and they are now. So That's just the way it is. On either side of it, that's what you pretty much had: political commentators and then professional victims, people who don't create really good content, but because people hate the shitty content they create and catch a lot of shit for it, they can use identity politics and profit off of that. And that's just what they were doing before. It's what they did during and after. So.
Do you think gamers suffer right now because there's a lack of a specific kind of journalism? Or do you think YouTube and Twitch and all that has filled that void?
I really think, for the most part, that's the issue of ethics in game journalism. It's like they had the issues. It was solely focused on print, or online print, and it's like, well, geez, these people are posting these articles and they're getting 30,000 views on this, and it's like you're kind of getting mad over nothing. In a lot of ways, it was getting really mad at a market that just wasn't worth getting so much pent up energy released on,
Right.
But I think YouTube, Twitch has really. I mean, that's the other thing, is that these guys, Kotaku, Polygon, etc., they didn't like YouTube back then. They didn't like the rise of the YouTube gamer community or whatever, the market that was forming there, because they were slow to get on it and their content sucks in that form.
Right.
So you had all these people blowing up, and they that's new media, but it wasn't wasn't the newest media at the time.
Right.
So YouTube was blowing up, and it's very obvious they don't fucking like YouTubers. They never did.
The problem to me is that, if and again, it's not the journalist's responsibility, it's the consumer's responsibility to stop consuming their product. But to me, I look at things like I said to Colin, when you have Bobby Kotick on stage, like Dean Takahashi did, and you don't grill him on tax evasion and capitulation to China, that's a problem. When you have people covering Ubisoft, like I was talking to one of our regulars, great journalist, and I think he's in Portugal, and he's like, well, because I was saying today, it's like, all these people covering Ubisoft's Avatar game, it's like, this is the same company that, has had a lot of sexual harassment and toxic accusations, and some of them have been admitted. And there was also a report recently that came out and said that they haven't really gotten any better. And it's like, how can you, on one hand, report on Avatar and their press conference and not mention the fact that, hey, by the way, this is a company that maybe you should think about before you throw your money at them. I'm not saying that every website should be agenda-based like that, but the fact that they have no problem criticizing these companies on one hand, but making a shit ton of money off of them when the big games release. Or they'll criticize Crunch, but they'll still review the games that are made with Crunch. And they'll still take the advertising from games that are made with Crunch. To me, I can live with it because I don't really give a fuck. I can go other places if I don't like those sources. But it's certainly, I think I hope gamers are aware of just how hypocritical these people are.
I would hope. Like, that's another thing. I mean, you talk a lot of shit about China, and there's a lot of people who are just going to be real turned off about that because they go, Jesus Christ, this guy's going to get me fired if I give this guy an interview. What if he mentions China? What if I put him on a live stream and he starts talking about how shitty Activision is because of their relationships with China? It might get me fired. And that's the thing with these people. They just want to protect their own interests, protect their bottom line. And they just got no spine. And really is what it boils down to.
I mean, yeah, but I hear you, and I don't know what you do for a living, but I hear you, and the fact is, I have a spine because I'm privileged enough to have one. I don't know how much, if I didn't have money in the bank, if I didn't have investments, if I hadn't had a career already, I don't know if I would be so quick to turn down an offer from a big Chinese company that was going to give me creative freedom and over $100 million to direct a new AAA game that literally they said, let's make a God of War killer. I don't know if I would be comfortable talking about China. I'd like to think that I would, but you've got a kid as well, right? Or you've got kids. Ultimately, it's like Jean Valjean stealing the loaf of bread in Les Mis. It's, we all want to think we're heroes, but at the end of the day, we will break the law to protect our own. We will do all kinds of things to protect our family and protect ourselves. And I don't think I'm above that. I think I just happen to be able to be privileged enough that it doesn't hit me that way. But you're goddamn right. If I had somebody on, I would ask him. If I had Bobby Kotick on, you goddamn right, I would ask him about China. I would ask him about...
He was just on that panel or something not too long ago,
That's
and
right.
he just skates right through it with a shit-eating grin on his face, and it's like, could somebody ask this motherfucker a question that matters, please?
That's exactly right. But no, they won't. They won't. And then they have the gall to actually go after people like Colin. Again, I'm not like, I'm not like, I like Colin a great deal. I'm not like, the Colin Moriarty apologist, which he does not need anyway. But I do think he absolutely gets shit on by a lot of these people. There was a great article yesterday, and I forget what her name was. Sophia something. She used to work with Colin, but I don't think they're synced up anymore. But she was writing about the Five Nights at Freddy's guy, who basically was revealed to have donated a bunch of money to Republicans, and then his community was just like, fuck you, we hate you, and they were making death threats, and I guess the guy retired or whatever.
That's typical in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, a fan has every right to go look. I mean, I don't follow Five Nights, I don't follow the fandom. My understanding is the fandom is very left-leaning, LGBT, all that. When they found out he was making donations to Mitch McConnell and all that, they're like, go fuck yourself, we think you're a piece of shit now. That's their right. That's their right. I mean, he gave an excuse. He gave a reason why, and I have my own criteria for why I think someone will cross the line where I won't support them based on their donations, and everyone has that right. But the problem was this Sophia woman wrote this article, and she was like pointing out a bunch of game journalists that were like Patrick Klepek was one that literally just came out and was like, he said something like, okay, see ya, bye, like you're basically canceled for doing that. And it's just like, it's like, unless this guy donated to Republicans on January 6th or after, and those Republicans, of which there are some, by the way, who literally are calling for civil war, like this representative in Alabama. Or the FBI has come out recently and said that there are a number of high-ups in Trump's inner circle that knew about this and were hoping it would be successful. Unless if you can link that to that and go, you're donating to these people with the intent of helping what a lot of people would call an insurrection. Short of that, though, as much as I think Mitch McConnell is one of the most evil people on the planet, it's not illegal to donate to the guy. I think it's awful, but it's not illegal.
No. I mean, are you going to sit there and tell me that these fucking game journalists didn't donate to Biden or Kamala or something along the way? Like, for real, they just probably just didn't mention it. You can just stop supporting all these lefty people who donated probably massive amounts of money to lefty candidates. I guess it's so stupid. So do you enjoy the product or not?
Right. And they have a right to say that, but it's just like, it really is.
I think it's virtue signaling nonsense for the most part.
Well, I think it's also just like, yeah, do I think Mitch McConnell's dangerous? Fuck yeah. He's awful. But so what? The guy, unless the guy's breaking the law. But yeah, Brad says he gave Mitch McConnell $5,000, but he also gave St. Jude's $500,000.
There you go.
It's like, people get to have different ideas as long as they're not, and again, I say I don't know anybody more progressive than I am. I mean, I fucking want to give plants voting rights. I don't care. I think a lot of people would like to hear more a measured view of GamerGate, because I mean, do you think GamerGate got what they deserve then in terms of the reputation? Because that reputation right now is really
just total trash.
It's total trash, and a lot of people feel that it should be. I mean, do you agree that they made their bed and they shouldn't complain, or do you think that they were treated unfairly based on what they allowed their organization to become because there was no leadership, because there was no PR?
I mean, that's the thing. You say organization, it's like, well, the whole point is it's not an organization. It's just a loose-knit group of people that came together for a common cause. Gosh, just shut the fuck up. Like, did you get anything done?
Right.
And at the end of the day, the only things I can see that were actually done, we got the Kunkel Awards created, which as of last year or this year is actually turning just into a standard SPJ Mark of Excellence in Gaming Journalism Award. If you're in journalism, getting a Mark of Excellence award in your category is kind of a big deal.
Okay.
It's like, I would like to see eventually, I read it took a sports writer 39, almost 40 years, something like that, to win a Pulitzer Prize.
Right.
Could you imagine a Pulitzer Prize being won by a video game journalist? Right now, probably the fuck not. But wouldn't it be really cool and interesting for the industry?
Sure.
If someone actually put out something that was worthy of a Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah.
It'd be great. But we're not going to see that in this climate, especially as politically charged as everything is. And it's the fucking mess. But we got the Kunkel Awards created. We got a bunch of ethics policies updated, implemented, changed. Like, that's a little thing, but at least it's
like
something.
Like what? Like, what does that even mean?
Just for example, like the affiliation with people. I mean, that's kind of a big no-brainer type of thing. It's like, oh yeah, I lived with this person. Oh, I used to date this person. I'm currently literally banging this person.
Okay.
But I'm not going to tell you about that in the article as I write positive feedback or tell you should play this game or do that. It's like, man, I don't care about that. I don't really care that you're banging the person I don't give a shit. But you're a journalist. Your fucking job is to disclose this sort of shit, because when people find out about it, guess what happens? It creates a big fucking mess, and it's like, this is so easily avoided.
Well, I think we can agree. I think we can agree that shouldn't happen. That they should disclose the stuff if there's a conflict of interest. But what did GamerGate do to fix that? There's no law. It's not like you can. I mean,
well, loosely, there's not a law, but there's an FTC regulation that I actually had a part in getting done. It's literally the affiliate disclosure thing.
Okay.
Started a while ago. Do you remember? Geez, it was when the Xbox One came out, the original one. There was this thing with Machinima and Microsoft. Machinima was set up this thing to tell influencers to promote the product, but don't tell anyone you're promoting the product. Sign up through here. You get an additional CPM on your videos if you use this campaign tag, and sign up your YouTube channel through here, but don't tell anyone it's a paid promotion. That's illegal. And Machinima got slapped with I think maybe a minor fine or something. But what ended up happening was that the FTC issued what was called a final consent order on it. And I actually have the link for you. It's in the description of the video I put up. And I was the one who leaked the contract, because I was like, there's no fucking way this is legal. Like there's something really weird with telling people to promote a product, but then don't tell people that you're being paid to promote it. Like I'm not a fucking genius, but I'm pretty sure that's fucked up.
But that law was already on the books. You guys just sort of brought it to their attention.
It wasn't, apparently. I guess not in online marketing. I guess it just didn't exist. So that's why they thought they could do it. But the FTC got wind of it, and they're like, "Look, you know you shouldn't be doing this sort of shit. So we're gonna turn this to an actual FTC regulation, slap you with some sort. I think it might have been a fine, like a small fine or something, but it was kind of a mess. What ended up changing though, it had kind of long-ranging effects. Do you remember those articles? I don't know if you used to see these. I used to see these all the fucking time. 4, 5, 6 years ago, especially, they would be articles that were advertisements, but they were disguised as articles. Like you couldn't, it didn't say paid promotion. Have you noticed you don't really see those anymore?
Well, you see them, but they say ads. Like if you go to N4G, it's disguised to look like an N4G story, but if you look, it's like, oh, it says advertisement.
Yeah, that stupid little thing where it's like, this is an ad that didn't used to be there, and it's there now because of me essentially releasing that thing, and that ended up taking a couple years to go through, but they were like, yeah. And they put out a whole guide. It's on the FTC site. I'd linked it on the thing.
Is that there because of you, or that's there because of GamerGate?
I mean, it's literally there because I made a stink about the Machinima and Microsoft thing, but I would attribute like some of that. It was 2013. It was a good year before GamerGate, good 8 months or so, but it led into it because that was some of the things. If you go to deepfreeze.it, right, that site, and you look at some of the, it's basically just a list of, there's a bunch of stuff on there about GamerGate, but there's also a bunch of like a list of journalists, and you can click on cataloged entries of things these journalists have done, gaming journalists mostly, that are fucked up things, and a lot of those people are going to be not listed on there for doing shit like that, where it's like, this is a paid promotion. Like, why didn't you disclose it? How does an editor-in-chief say, yeah, this is good, put this up? Like, shouldn't an editor-in-chief know this is shady, fucking weird shit?
Okay, so it sounds like, maybe I'm wrong, but it sounds like if somebody said you were one of the most serious people about the ethics and journalist aspect of GamerGate, would you say? I don't
give a shit about the other stuff.
Would you say that you would agree though that you were one of the biggest kind of voices and movers and shakers when it comes to that topic?
On that topic, but the issue is like the main thing that moved and shook GamerGate was the culture war stuff.
Right.
No, and it's like, so the ethics stuff got buried so fast, and we were just there's not too many of us that were still like, look, can we just get some shit done on the ethics and gaming journalism thing?
Right.
It's like we didn't need national news about this. We didn't need fucking Law and Order SVU creating a GamerGate episode. I just wanted maybe some policies updated, some people to come out and say.
That was my question then. So why was that? Why is that? I mean, it's not that I disagree with anything you're saying regarding those changes. I think they're important, but why was that important to you? Like, why did that matter so much to you specifically about that in the video game industry? Like, why did you? I mean, I just
have a knack for, not really a knack, like a tick, I guess. You know, I see something that's fucked up, and it's like, man, why? And it's such an easy, simple, fixable thing. And it's not like, oh, Medicaid or something. It's like, that's really complicated. I don't know how to fucking fix that. But this little tiny issue, come on, you can put in a disclosure like, hey, I know this person, but look, their game is still really good. And another thing was like all the political crap that was coming in, especially before GamerGate. The whole Anita Sarkeesian tropes versus women in video games shit was just nutty. Like, I mean, it's some nutty shit, and not 1 ounce of criticism was levied against her by mainstream gaming media. Not one fucking bit. And I thought that was a little weird. And if you started putting out like YouTube videos or anything and dissecting her work, you would be labeled as a fucking misogynist and sexist, whatever. The whole racism and other shit didn't really become a big thing until later. Back then it was all feminism, sexism, misogyny stuff. Now everybody's a racist and white supremacist, even if they're black. It's just the way things are. But back then, those videos specifically, you couldn't talk about them in a negative light. The mainstream media would fuck you up. They created a Twitter bot to block anybody who disparaged it, basically, and you could be blocked by all the gaming journalists and whatever. And it's like, it's just so fucking stupid and petty. And it was so stupid and petty that you couldn't help but like mention to people how stupid and fucking petty it was. And so it was one of those things you talk about, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and every day it was a new thing. It's like, oh, why? Why are they doing this shit? Why can't you just have an honest conversation about this stuff? Like, I don't want shit to get worse. I don't want people to come into the industry, like Anita Sarkeesian, for example, and then essentially bully their way into game consultant roles, which is what she did. This whole thing was a fucking game consultant racket. It's just so stupid. I didn't understand why the game journalists would not just.
Well, what do you think? What do you think it? What do you think it? What do you think it was? Why do you think? Well, why do you think they were like that? Why weren't they willing to say, we agree? Because I've never really watched more than 5 minutes of Anita Sarkeesian. I reached out to her and said, hey, come on the show, because I think you would find, meaning Anita would find, that her and I have a lot in common, if at least what I know about her is to be believed, which is, I'm a male feminist. I believe in, Gloria Steinem feminism. I don't, a lot of people have different definitions now, but I believe in equality of the sexes and all that. I think a lot of people do.
Not so much for the third wave stuff.
I don't, I'm just like, it's too much definitions. Do I think men and women should be treated equal? Of course.
Yeah. Of course.
But I was like, let's have a conversation. She, of course, hasn't gotten back to me, but,
that's not gonna happen.
Why do you think the journalists were unable to say, of course we agree that if there are games that treat women poorly or express things poorly that maybe make women feel bad about themselves or give bad ideas to the world, those are good things to point out, but we also have these problems with Anita's video. Why couldn't they dissect it the way these YouTube guys were doing it, or girls were doing it?
It's probably a lot due to, the YouTubers likely independent. They're not worried about pissing anybody off or their group of friends. But a lot of these people are interconnected. If you go back and look at Jonathan McIntosh and Anita Sarkeesian, I think he was her producer. Those guys were friends with a lot of people with IndieCade, and the whole indie gaming scene was, I don't know how it is now, but back then everybody learned everything about it because it was a big deal. There's a lot of corruption coming out of who gets the best indie game award at IndieCade or whatever, or gets highlighted for this, and there was a lot of friendships that got exposed and people tying things together, and it's like, well, if all these people are fucking friends and they're just advocating for each other constantly, that does the cream of the crop really, does it rise? do we get what's actually the best, or do we get what's told is the best, and like people who are actually making good shit, does it just die off and people give up? Who knows?
Well, I mean, look, I was on for a while back in the day. I was on a number of those panels that voted for games, and I can tell you, it was that was the final straw for me of going, all award shows are stupid, because there was no sense. There was no sense. The only ones I care about are now personal games of the year or personal top 10, because it's like, okay, that's one person's view, and if I consistently agree with that gamer, I'm going to care about what they have to say. But these things where you vote, it's not just political, it's virtue signaling, and it's petty, and a lot of people don't even finish or play most of the games that they're voting on. It's absolute horseshit.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It was this question, I don't know if it's a question or a video, an article, something going around lately, where it's like, should game journalists or people who review games even play them, or some shit going around?
I got this I got a lot of shit for. It was a lady who I forget her name, Jean, who is I guess she's a career coach. That she also owns a company, a video game company, like a interactive storytelling company, but excuse me, but she also coaches people to come into the industry. And she basically said something like, if you are, and I took the video down because she said she was getting harassed and stuff, but she said, if you are a game developer that doesn't play games, you're still valid. And I was pretty harsh, and I shouldn't have been. I just found it so offensively stupid. That I just kind of said, I said something like, this is a moronic take. I didn't call her a moron, but I said, and I apologize.
The idea is bad. Yeah.
I still think it's a dumb idea, but I could have, I didn't have any beef with her, and I should have approached it better, but whatever. But it very quickly devolved into, This idea of, you know, the fact that she was a woman should have entered into my thinking about how and I was like going, why does people were literally coming at me? It's like, that's, you know, that's not the way you should address a woman in games. And I'm like, what does it matter if she's a woman or I had one of the most diverse teams in the industry when I had companies. I'm not opposed to anybody in games if they can do a great job, and a lot of times that's a woman. But I'm supposed to basically not respond to her comment as it being stupid because she's female? That doesn't mean, and I don't think she was asking for that either. But a lot of people just immediately ran into the fire like, I'll save you. And I'm like, we're just...
the White Knights, they're always there. They're always ready and willing.
Yeah, we're just fighting, man. We're just scrapping over, you know, stupid shit, man. I don't fucking know. Yeah. But
that's
anyway,
really run a pile of them.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to get some stuff done. And again, the fact of the matter is this conversation, which has been maybe an hour, 40 minutes, whatever, it was nuanced enough that anybody who listens to this would know I oppose so much about what GamerGate began to be associated with and is currently associated with today.
Became a shit show.
But the fact that I even had this conversation with you, and I'm just slowly learning to get over it. I'm slowly learning not to care, but my knee-jerk forever has been to address it. But there will be people now that are like, oh, see, Jaffe's pro GamerGate because I gave you compliments for some things. Who would disagree with what you got done? Those are good.
It's really simple shit.
Those are good things. Who would disagree with stuff. Wanting the media to say, Sarkeesian has some great points, but maybe here's some points that aren't so great?
Yeah, can we offer just a little bit of criticism, and then when the criticism is levied, can we just not go down the road of, well, you only said that because she's a woman, or you know, you think her idea is bad because she's a woman? It's like, I really could not give a shit who's throwing the idea out. I'm really kind of hyper focused on the intellectual aspect of what's being offered, and when you use footage like that Hitman clip was the worst one she ever put up. It had to be.
I didn't see that.
Do you remember the stupid Hitman thing?
No.
Oh God, it was. I'll try to brief it really quick. It was basically Hitman Absolution, I think. There was this part where there were a couple of exotic dancers off to the side. It was a side route. If you went over and messed up these girls, you would get penalized in game. So there was a direct, consequence for going over and smashing these girls up.
Okay.
Most of the people on YouTube who did playthroughs of this game or who were playing it all, they're like, look, don't go over there and don't mess with them. Don't even, the path is this way. Wait till the guard goes and then just ignore the girls and move on your happy way. Anita, of course, she takes the other route and goes over to the girls and messes them up and drags their bodies around, and she's like, look, you can use these women as objects. They're placed here so you can derive a sexually perverse thrill or some crazy language used, and it's like, pretty much nobody's doing this, and if you do this, you get penalized for it. It's like, it's not a sexual deviant game. Like, it's Agent 47. Like, calm down. He's just trying to be stealthy. But it was really bad because it was one of the things she put up to be like, oh my God, the misogyny in the industry. Just look at this. You can go over and you can mess these girls up, and like, it's really terrible. But no one ever thought.
Look, I absolutely.
Not an argument.
I hear what you're saying. I absolutely also. I think there is a lot of misogyny in games, but I don't necessarily think that what you've described, I haven't seen it, fits that bill. I think it's misogynistic in games. I had a bunch of people jump down my throat a few weeks ago when I was laying into a bunch of people for talking about Alloy. I'm sorry, I can't say her name. The woman from
no one can.
Horizon, and people are like, she's fat, and I'm like going, well, I don't think she is, but so what? If Guerrilla made a character and they want her to be a certain way and you don't like it, I respect that. Just don't play their game.
Yeah.
It's like, there's nothing wrong with normalizing different body types and different shapes. I agree that if you're going to make a power fantasy, if you're going to make something that aims to be super commercial, you probably, like Marvel Universe movies, you want to have the best looking people in those roles, but that's not the game they're making. There's a lot of misogyny that needs to be at least a light shown on it in the industry and the games that they make, but that doesn't mean everything's misogynistic. She called God of War misogynistic. I'm like, God of War is not misogynistic.
No doubt about it. I imagine she would.
Yeah.
But there's boobs. If you can see boobs, it's misogyny.
Right.
That's kind of rule 34 at least.
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, you can talk about games like Heaven's, I think it's Heaven's Sword. There's like this special move you can do where you're a woman. You're like a really hot fantasy warrior woman person. You can jump in the air and twist this dude up, and when you come down, you split his legs apart and stomp on his junk.
Right.
And it's like, is that not like a hatred of men thing? This is pretty obviously someone had to code that. It seems like a little overkill.
I think I think in that case there is a valid argument to say. I mean, I agree with you. I get your point, but I think all things aren't still equal, and I think a lot of women and feminists would say, yeah, but you're talking about a class or a group of people, which are the men, that have so much power that, yeah, it shouldn't be okay, but let's deal with the fact that women can't walk down the street right now without being catcalled, and they're literally scared to walk home at night because a lot of men are still being raised to be such assholes. That
depends where you are.
I know, but I'm just saying. But I hear you, and I agree with a lot of that, though. All right, man. Thanks for waiting. I appreciate the chat. It's very informative. Thank you, sir.
No problem. I'll be back.
All right, man.